Hey peeps, Clear Lake peeps, Ross England here, Clear Lake Guide Service with your report from activities on Clear Lake for this past week. Today is 5/11/23, halfway into May, and sure isn't acting that way. So let's get over the details first. Water temperature starting out at 5th Street today was 60 degrees. It got up to, it's about 3:30 this afternoon, and it got up to 63, maybe 64. You probably can find it a little bit warmer in some other areas around the lake. I stayed on the upper end of the lake, so that's all I can report. Water clarity, kind of disappointing. I mean, there's some areas that you could see, we'll call it an average of about 3.5 feet, although there's some areas that you could only see about 1.5 feet, and there's some other areas you could see almost 4.5 feet. I'm sure if you go down below the Narrows and some of that water down there, you can probably find water clarity up to almost 8 feet in some areas. When I went down there one day last week, and there's some pretty clear water in some areas. Don't see any signs of any, real weed growth coming up yet, or haven't seen much as far as algae growth. Just a lot of dead goldfish and carp floating around. That's about all you see on the surface. Lake level actually came up a little bit with the storms that we've had the last week, and it's sitting at about 7.6, somewhere in that range. It's been so windy that when you're looking at the gauge, it goes like this. So we'll just say that the lake is still full. Upcoming activities: Thursday, Friday this week, there's a special event tournament. I'm sorry, can't remember the name. It's a memorial tournament for somebody. It's a team event going out of Lakeport. It's Thursday and Friday. And then Saturday, there's an ABA team event, which probably goes out of Lakeport again. So you've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, some increased boat traffic. ABA doesn't really draw a big event. And I've heard that the Thursday, Friday event is probably 30 boats, somewhere in that, neighborhood. So I'll tell you, when you're fishing out here right now, you don't feel crowded. There's just not a lot of fishing pressure, which tells you something about the bite. So let's see what else of any interest. If you were out and about this week, you might have seen Fish and Wildlife running around, doing some shocking and classifying everything that they shock and net, put in the boat. We saw them in Kelsey Creek today. They're typically here for 3 days at a time, usually once in the spring and once in the fall. So they were out and about today. So I think that's about it as far as what's going on around here. Let's talk about the fishing a little bit. This is the part that usually where the video views start to drop off. It's tough. I don't care what anybody says, it's still tough. Since our last report, we had one day where we had a really good 5-fish limit. We had a day that we couldn't fish because the weather was too rough. We had a day we got blown off because the weather was too rough. We had a day where we caught, I think, 3 fish. We had a day where we caught 1 fish. We had a day where we had 8 fish on, landed 5. We had a day where we had 3 fish on and landed 1. Very unspring-like results. Everybody that I have personally talked to on the lake is pretty much saying the same thing. For the most part, there's only been 2 people that I've actually talked to during this past week who actually caught some fish fishing and not looking. And I'll tell you, the sight fishing, bed fishing thing isn't that great. I just don't think there's that many fish really up. They should be. And it isn't a matter that you can't see them, because you can go into areas where you'll see spawning fish, and there's just not a lot of them. You know, I mean, you can go into an area that, you know, you might be able to, you know, typically when you go into an area and start looking, if you find 1 or 2 beds, you usually find, you know, a group of them, and then you go down a bank and you don't see anything, and then you find another group of them. Well, the groups that I'm seeing are 1 or 2. So, you know, I know spawning is going on around the lake. I know that, you know, the Clear Lake Oaks Keys has been busy down there. I know that there was a bunch of fish in the Lakeport lagoons up here. Both of those are pretty tough fishing unless you're really comfortable with, you know, your equipment and you're a good caster and can put baits in really tight spots. So as far as just running the bank, the only thing that we have personally caught any fish on just fishing has been a Senko. And as much as I hate throwing that goofy thing, if you throw it around enough, you'll get a bite here and there. But we never found any consistency in what to throw it on. Surprisingly, if I think about the fish that we caught one on a dock, we caught one on a wall, we caught one on a tree, we caught one in some tules. So there's 4 fish, and there's no rhyme or reason to them. It's just a matter of you pitch it on top of one of their heads, they might eat it. So can't stay this way forever. I keep saying that. The weather last week, I think, was a bit of a setback. Not a bit, it was kind of a big setback. I think the weather that we're getting currently right now, with it starting to get up into the 80s towards the end of this weekend and going into next week, and some stability to that weather is going to help the bite. You know, we're seeing hitch all over the place. I think from what I'm seeing, and I'm not 100% about this, but just from my version, I think the crappie have spawned. I was talking to another one of the guides that we work with, Jeremy, and he's been doing some crappie trips, and he thinks they've already moved out as well. So it's just been a really weird year. It's wonderful to have a full lake, see all this water out behind me. It's wonderful to see this kind of weather, finally. I think I can finally put my rain gear away for the rest of this year, or at least until fall, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's your fishing report. It's been great being out here the last couple of days. It's nice to be out where you can be in a t-shirt again. It's just the fishing's just not coming along the way I think it should be. If you've been up here, and I know some of you have been because I get the feedback from you in the comments down below, it's not easy. And I share that with you. It's not easy. So one of these days it's gonna be. Don't know when, but I'll tell you when it happens to us. So we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.